Hello and welcome to a disc golf course playthrough and review. Today I am playing Bassett Creek Park in Crystal, Minnesota. Bassett Creek Park's disc golf course was established in 1993. In 2015 it was expanded from 12 to 15 holes. The course loops around the park, with the majority of the holes being on the more open west side of the park. Hole 1 is a par 3, 250 feet. The basket's about 100 feet past the little hill in front there. It lines up good for a turnover shot with a mid, or either an overstable forehand shot. Here I'm just going with a Sexton Firebird, something nice and overstable that can keep towards the right side, towards the basket. And I've seen people throw the turnover shot with a putter before, and it works pretty well. You just have to make sure you get it high enough. Mainly just get it up the gut and a little bit towards the right side, and you should have a pretty good look for your birdie. And I leave it about 10 feet to the right on this one. I leave myself a nice tap-in birdie to start off my round. So hole 2 is a par 3, 165 feet, a good place just to throw an approach disc or a mid to the right side with a V-shaped tree, or you can throw a forehand up the larger gap to the left side and let it fade a little bit at the end. So I'm throwing a T-bird here. I throw it a little bit too high and leave myself about 30 to 35 feet from the basket, which isn't bad considering I thought it'd be a lot worse. And here I do manage to convert the putt, which is great, managing to take a birdie on what usually should be a pretty simple hole if you can execute your shot. Hole 3 is a par 3, 234 feet. It's pretty simple. You just try to get something to fade off once it gets to where those trees form kind of an X in the middle. And here I'm throwing my method. I usually don't throw too many backhands. As you can see, my form's kind of atrocious. But just throwing like a putter or like a straight flying mid, like a buzz or something along those lines will work to get you pretty close to the basket. I leave it short. I hit that log in front there. It leaves me about a 70-foot jump putt for a birdie. So I give it what I can on this one, but I end up having to go a little too far to the right and end up a little long. And so now I tap out my par. Hole 4 is 193 feet. It's par 3. And it's actually a surprisingly difficult hole. The gap is, I wouldn't say it's small, but having to push it so far to the right side is what makes it difficult. I'm throwing just a T-bird here, kind of going just to get in the middle of the fairway just so I can get up for a par. If you have a really good backhand turnover, you could probably get it down there, but it's pretty tough. So I'm probably about 120, 30 feet away, just trying to jump in and get it close. Then I end up hitting those branches that were there and leaving myself probably about a 20-foot look, which is pretty awkward with these trees in front. I probably could have gotten a little lower and maybe give myself a better angle, but I end up dinking it off the top of the basket and have to take a bogey on a hole that is very short, but a little bit more difficult than you would probably expect. Hole 5 is 500 feet, par 4. It's the only true par 4 on the course. Sometimes people call hole 14 a par 4. But basically, you just want to get down either the far left side. I'm throwing a wraith here. And if you get it on the left, I've learned it opens up a lot more. Or if you can get it really far to the right side, kind of where the path is, then it opens up the angle for just a nice little simple backhand hyzer with like a zone or something along those lines. So here I'm flexing in a tactic trying to get it to the basket. I end up getting it about probably 70, 80 feet away. If I would have gotten a little higher, it probably could have gotten closer to the basket, but leave myself a pretty far jump putt, which I give a bid, but not really with the expectation to make it. I'm more just laying up for a putt and then taking a par on a hole that can be tough for someone who doesn't know what kind of route to use on it. Hole 6 is a par 3, 265 feet. There's a couple options on this hole. Either on the right side where you can see those two trees, you can go with a backhand hyzer through that, or you can just throw something straight up the middle. I'm going with a Buzz SS here, just getting it to hyzer flip up to flat. And that type of shot works pretty well if you get something really flat and straight. So I end up leaving myself with what should be a pretty easy about 18, 20 footer, but for some reason I just miss low horribly. I know it should have been such an easy putt, but is what it is. A little upset there, as you can see. Definitely should have birdied this hole, but end up taking a par, which pars shouldn't really be much to ever complain about. Hole 7 is a par 3. It's 241 feet. There's a couple options, but the best option is just to throw a big right-hand backhand hyzer and just avoid all the trees on the left side. So even as someone who likes throwing sidearms, I even go for it. And I'm throwing a T-bird here again as I did on hole 4. And this shot, I mean, someone who doesn't have a good backhand, it's not very difficult to get it down there even. So I leave myself probably about a 40-foot look, give it a bid, but end up missing left and then end up taking a par. Hole 8 is 287 feet, it's par 3. There's a little bit of water that can be in play in front of the basket there, but for the times that I've ever thrown it, I usually would just play it as casual since it's really inconsistent whether it's dried up or when it's actually there. So here I'm going with a sidewinder, just trying to have it do a little S and get to the basket. A right-hand backhand hyzer works actually extremely well on this hole if you get to the right of that tree. So I'm down kind of by the water, but there's a little bit in front of it that's not wet, but it's still kind of low in elevation. Being down there isn't the worst thing. It's probably better than being long or on the right side. But I still have about a 30-foot look here. That's a pretty challenging putt, and I managed to hit it, which was great considering where I was. And I'm taking a birdie on a medium to hard hole, I'd say. Hole 9 is a par 3. It's 232 feet. Plays probably more like 300 to 325. It's severely uphill, but the options are basically limitless. You can just go straight at it. You can go left side wide, right side wide. Here I'm throwing an Excalibur just because I know it'll consistently fade over, and I could hit pretty far up the hill, probably leaving myself a 15-footer or so. Not too hard of a shot. And the basket on this one's kind of messed up. Hopefully they get it fixed soon, but the putt wasn't too big of a deal still. Managed to hit in the center and secure a birdie on a hole that usually is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So hole 10 is a 398-foot par 3. This is the stretch of about 3 holes that are pretty difficult and pretty long. This one probably being the most difficult of them all. It was pretty windy up here at the top, so I go with a Shrike trying to get it to turn over. I was kind of just hoping for the best on this one. So basically, if you can do a hyzer flip and get it to slowly just start fading towards the basket on the in between the trees, then that should get you a pretty close look. I have a fantastic result, honestly, for this hole. Leaving myself maybe 30, 35 feet, which for how windy it was and for how a Shrike is, I was pretty happy with. And I just leave my putt really short on that one. Not really sure why. I don't know if it was the wind or what, but yeah, taking a par on that hole isn't usually that big of a deal. It's a pretty easy par, but a pretty difficult birdie. So hole 11, par 3, 363. Maybe plays a tiny bit less than that because you're going downhill, but the left side is much more open with that one tree on the right there. So a forehand is actually probably the perfect play on this hole. A big forehand with a distance driver works very well on this hole. So I end up leaving about only like a 12, 15-foot look to secure my birdie on this hole, which was pretty good because this hole has got some okay distance for an intermediate type player as myself. Hole 12 is a par 3, 387 feet. It's fairly similar distance to hole 10 is. You can do basically whatever play you want. You can go big lefty hook, big righty hook. You can go straight at it. The main thing is you want to avoid that taller tree that my disc is kind of heading towards right now. And if you can avoid that, you're basically in the open and can get a guaranteed par and maybe a longer look at birdie. So I left myself about 50 feet here. And I managed to actually secure the putt, which felt great because I don't make too many putts from that distance. And especially on a long hole, it feels good to get a birdie. Hole 13 is 227, it's par 3. And you want to throw it right in between the tall tree in the middle of the screen and the pine tree hybrid thing on the right and have it go just a little bit to the right. You can also throw a spike hyzer actually over that pine tree towards the right side. I've seen people do that in a tournament before, and they usually can end up parking the hole. So I'm just going with the buzz here. I don't throw it hard enough, and it just hyzers off into the pine tree thing. And I end up leaving myself with probably a good 60-foot look at it. I decided to just give it a run just because and hit it off the right side of the chain just a little bit. I kind of thought I had a good chance they were going in, but not a big deal. Left myself probably about a 20, 25-foot comebacker putt. This hole doesn't play too difficult as long as you get it into the opening down here, or honestly anywhere even where I was landing. Makes it a pretty easy par, and it usually can be a pretty simple birdie, but nothing too bad. Hole 14 is par 3, 457. This one used to be a par 4, but the new signage they put in calls it as a par 3. So there's kind of a local route I like to take, and it's go over the road on the left side and get it around the large pine in the middle. A lot of people get stuck by that pine because it's so big, but it allows you to get a pretty easy par if you can get it around and have good forehand distance. So I basically just laying up here from about 100 feet and leave myself with a tap-in putt. Hole 15 is a par 3, 201 feet. Maybe plays like 120, 130 feet. Super easy. Just throw a zone or a putter at it and let it fade over. And it's a very simple downhill hole. Any person who can throw a disc can basically park this hole. Not a lot of skill required, but I'm just going with a tactic here. Just try and get it to fade down and park the basket, essentially, in which I leave myself about a 20 foot, maybe a little less than that for the look. But then it's just get a pretty easy birdie on definitely the easiest hole on the course. So to conclude, I shot -6, which is my second best round. I shot a -7 one, so a pretty good round for myself. On UDIS, this course is a 3.7. I gave it a 4 out of 5 because it's my home course, and it has some good distance, and it can be challenging if the wind is up. But holes 2, 3, and 4, and especially hole 4, they're not that great, and holes 10 and 12 have some colliding fairways, which can be a little dangerous. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.